First things first, Jeff, how are you?
I'm good. I'm doing all right, hanging in there.
It's very good to hear. Uh, Before we get into your latest record, I would like to start in the beginning, kind of with your creative ventures. And when you were growing up, did you have any other creative outlet than writing or music?
uh, Not really. I mean, I guess I drew a lot. I was a kid that carried around sketch notebook and markers, and I liked drawing. But music has always been the main consolation.
And when you discovered music, was it immediately uh, as something you would like to create in a sense, or was it first also mostly listening and then just enjoying it?
um, I mean, it was really music was had a powerful effect on me very, very young, beyond past where I can remember. Um, uh, so, uh, my mother always would tell people that it was something I would cry until she would put a record on, and that she. And I don't know if she just embellished that after I ended up becoming a musician or something, but it sounds right to me. It's always been a real comfort. Um, I don't know. Um, I think it's had such a strong effect on me at such an early age that um, I think I was shocked to find out that I wasn't the one creating it.
Mm,
I, I think that it happened before that period in your life where you sort of separate from the universe and have some autonomy. Um, and I don't think it would ever occurred to me that it was something that someone created.
right.
Uh, um, so I think uh, that's a weird that's a weird delusional sort of like, um, but I think accurate.
Mm,
Um, uh, Kind of psychological interpretation of how I think I looked at it.
sure. When then did it become more tangible in a sense for you, that creative aspect of yourself?
Um, uh, I think when I tried to play music and tried to learn an instrument, um, uh, it wasn't easy for me. It wasn't
Right.
like something that had an initial um, like feeling that I was going to be a virtuoso or something. It wasn't something that just naturally made sense to me. What did make sense to me was putting a few notes together and having an emotional effect happen somehow. And so I think that my initial uh, relationship with an instrument was based on that more than learning how to play other people's songs, or it just
Right.
seemed like a vehicle for or an extension of this idea that um, I could make these little emotional moments happen for myself.
And in that time, do you then think about kind of like you say, making that connection for yourself, making yourself feel something, or did you always have something like this? This is something that needs to be shared in a way.
Uh, well, I think that as I got older and as the teen years and the angst and the uh, sort of the alienation I was feeling at that time made it. Uh, I don't know. I sensed a deep power in this idea that you could express yourself with music,
Mm,
and then punk rock came along, and this, by extension, this sort of daydream or this projection of myself as being on someone that could wield this power almost as revenge for for the I don't know, people that were like immune to it, to beauty or something. It's like there's a deep frustration, and that seemed like to be like an extreme reaction to it, and a way to I don't know, just grab people by the shoulders and shake them and say, pay attention or something. I was like really
Right.
emotional, and so I sensed that power was there. I think it was a long time before I really um, felt like I had any ability to actually do that, and so I think I still don't really. I still don't think I can. I don't think I have the romanticism of the Clash, which would have been one of the bands at the time that I would have astral projected myself into the idea that I could be in that that space.
Well, what I found interesting then is because they say kind of to learn a craft or something, there's this cliche you need to put in 10,000 hours and then you'll be good at something. So for you, you mentioned kind of you don't feel that way even now, but was there a moment as you were kind of developing that craft where you felt you were proficient enough to share it?
Oh, I think that yeah, I think I got off on the wrong track on that last answer,
Okay.
because I do feel like I'm proficient at that side
Okay.
of it. I
Okay.
do feel like there's um, uh, um, there's not an obligation to share, but I think
Mm.
that I feel better not just doing it for myself. I feel better sharing. But I think that what I don't feel like I was ever able to achieve is more the idea that it was going to be some sort of revenge, or was actually
Sure.
have that kind of um, uh, that I could inflict that reaction on somebody else.
Right. Right.
Um, I've over a long period of time, I've come to the understanding that I don't have much control over what the world makes of what I make.
Mm.
But I do feel good about sharing it.
Is that a difficult process then to kind of let those very personal creative things go into the world, and then kind of I suppose initially you want people to hear in it what you hear in it, but when people have different interpretations, is that weird to get used to?
Um, I don't mind the different interpretations that much. I really don't. I'm pretty open
Okay.
to that. The part that I'm so naive, and I still get surprised by it every time I put an album out or put something into the world, is uh, indifference,
Mm.
or this um, refusal to accept it in the spirit that it was created.
Mm.
Like um, some people react like you're trying to do something wrong or
Sure.
something. They
Right,
change,
right, right.
or becoming a different person or a different songwriter, or expressing yourself in a different way. I don't know. Over time, but I understand also people don't always have the same amount of time to put into a new record. They don't always have the same amount of, I mean, I get all of that,
Mhm.
but my naive, even I think I'm still having I maintain this very young version of myself somewhere inside of me that just really wants people to, uh, I just want there to be a connection. I just really want people to love it, and I want them to know that I'm, I'm honestly trying to share something, and that it surprises me every time when it's not taken that way.
Right. And one thing I wonder about somebody like you is very prolific in writing, and you've written so many songs over the years. Did that kind of did it become easier as you went along, or is it like you say in the book, you're still trying to write that one song?
I uh, the part of me that can make stuff up and get lost in that process is the same as it's always been.
Okay.
It's easy. That part is easy. Um, the only part that's ever hard is whether I accept what I've made, or how much I like what I've made.
Mm,
you you just kind of have to make peace with. You very rarely write the song you set out to write. You very rarely, I don't know if you ever just think, I want to write a song about this, and then it turns out as like fully realized as you could possibly imagine it. That's never going to be as good of a song anyway, in
sure.
my opinion. Um, the thing that you discover that you didn't know, and you're maybe even slightly embarrassed by, coming out of you, um, is way more interesting to me than the fully realized, crafted piece of song craft that your ego is 100% on board with.
Right. Sure.
that that always ends up being way less. Over time, those songs just don't hold up.
Right. Well, this reminds me of something. I was talking to another artist, a guy from a band called Palace Winter, the other day, and he told me you were one of his kind of songwriting inspirations. And he kind of, I told him, if you have a question, I'll ask it, and it was a good one. So he asked, did you ever struggle with doubt then in terms of your creativity, and if so, how did you kind of deal with that?
Um, well, I think everybody struggles with doubts, and every aspect of everybody's life, you potentially go through periods where you doubt your relationships, you doubt your job, you doubt um, your self worth. I think that's just a part of life. That's not unique to any kind of songwriting
Sure.
endeavor. Um, for me, uh, songwriting, oddly enough, has been one of the conflict-free places that I can go in my life to hide from those doubts in a way. Um, uh, Not necessarily because I don't have any doubts about my songwriting, but because, at the very least, I disappear when I'm um, in that process.
Right.
And I know that if I'm experiencing doubts about it, it's because I'm not actually engaged in the process. In other words, I don't doubt it when I'm making something. But if I'm walking around thinking about whether my record is as good as it could be, or whether it's as good as someone else's record, or
Sure.
uh, that's just because I'm not doing the thing is required to make it.
That kind of alludes to another element which kind of comes with the package if you become a professional musician, is kind of that shift from where your music is your livelihood in a way. When that happened, did that affect you mentioned you kind of have this younger version of yourself still in there, but did kind of the fact that it became your livelihood, did that affect your songwriting in any sense?
Um, I I mean, everything affects everything in some way, so I can't dismiss that idea. But consciously, I don't feel like that. I
Okay.
don't. Um, uh, One of the things I feel very fortunate about in my life, and having made music for such a long time, is that very early on, I was pretty happy. And that was way before, um, I was making enough money to take care of a family or, have material things or anything like that. I was pretty satisfied with the idea that I get to do this. And almost every step of the way for me personally, I've been more geared towards trying to figure out what next move I can make to get to do this more.
Right.
Not necessarily to make the most money. And so those motivations have stayed, I think, I don't know. The simplest way to answer it is I think I've managed successfully to keep the art ahead of the commerce in my mind, at least, where I feel the most satisfied with that type of success. I successfully wrote the song today, not I got paid for it.
Right. Well, yeah, it doesn't, I suppose, get much better than that if that's kind of your safe haven. Um,
Mhm.
when Well, let's in moving towards a new album then, because there's a line on the record there which kind of I know it's about something else, but it kind of refers to songwriting, uh, which is they say no work of art is ever done. How do you feel about that when you think about songwriting?
Well, it's sort of similar to what I was saying about how the fully realized idea of a song that you think you're going to make is never as ends up never being as good as what actually happens. Um, and that's an extension of that idea because you don't feel sort of so much in control of what comes out of you sometimes. I think it's hard to accept it. And there's this belief that, or mistaken notion that if you keep working on it, you'll get to that
Sure.
other thing. You'll get to that best version that you envisioned. Um, um, and I think that's kind of where your mind toggles back and forth between those two ideas of just accepting what you got and wishing that you could make it more somehow. Um, but you end up having to get good at letting it go.
Right.
That's really one of the keys of making art is like just being able to, 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 to determine a good place to say goodbye.
Fair enough. Well, this is kind of an unfair question then, but do you think you've gotten close to that with certain songs to that ideal version that you had in your mind?
uh, well, I think it's tricky to talk about because I think that your ego takes
Fair
claims
enough.
things.
Yes.
Like, oh yeah, well, that's exactly what I intended to do, and it gets really tricky to talk about and distinguish between yourself. But if I'm being completely honest, um, uh, no, I think I've gotten good at identifying things that have come out of me that I think are better than me, better than what I could have dreamed of making, and then then I'm really moved by it in a way that I feel like I'm almost a third party listener, or I mean, an objective person listening to it.
If we take this new album, then Love is the King, when do you kind of, in that whole writing process, feel like now is the time that it's starting to take shape as an album? Or is there ever a point like that?
Um, uh, well, this one had yeah, I think early on, I think actually maybe about halfway through almost any group of songs that I'm working on, an album form starts to take shape because you inevitably start listening to songs next to each other, you know, or one after another, and they start making connections and they start um, telling you where they want to be in a sequence or what other songs sound good next to them. And it's sort of guided a little bit more than the pure act of songwriting, because I think that those choices are more based on your actual listening tastes,
Sure.
and what kind of records you like. And for me, I generally try and make a record that I haven't made before, or try and make a record that I don't think I have anything exactly like it from somebody else.
Well, that's interesting that you mentioned kind of the tastes and for instance on this record I believe you wanted to kind of have this country music base or foundation in the songs, and then that country music has always been kind of close to your heart. Did you mentioned also punk music earlier on? So was country music in your life at that point, or is that something you've discovered along the way?
Uh, Folk music, and simple. I think of punk rock and country music and folk music as sort of working class, simple, almost the same type of folk art expression, accessible, populist in a way. Um, uh, an accessible beauty, and minimal. And I think I did really kind of discover those two types of music around the same time and made a connection to them around the same time in my life. Hank Williams and Woody Guthrie and people like that, in a way, seemed almost more direct and more violent than punk rock. Not violent in the sense of violence, but they like just in the how their lyrics would hit you like a punch in the face.
The
Like they're
heartache of it. I mean, the name that now springs to mind is Towns Van Zandt, who had that. I always call it a gut punch. Certain songs of his, they just give you a gut punch in a way.
right. And then, I mean, yeah, there's not as much anger, but there's an intensity of emotion that feels like anger almost, that we usually ascribe to an emotion like anger, but it's because we don't tend to allow ourselves to feel other emotions with that sort of intensity. But I don't know. I now I think of almost. I think of soul music. I've made the connection with lots and lots of different types of genres, and I look at it more like it's people figuring out a way to liberate themselves and be themselves on purpose, and allow themselves to sort of be proud about their flaws and who they are and be okay with themselves. And punk rock was liberating that way. Folk music is liberating in that way. It's empowering. Soul music, definitely. Blues, reggae, ska, it all has some of that element to me.
And this might sound like a weird question then, but how, in that sense, how important has music been in your life? And then obviously it's kind of been there the whole way through. But how important in kind of those terms that you now mentioned in terms of yeah, how important was that?
Um,
Or it still is,
I
obviously.
mean, as important as anything that you can't imagine its absence.
Mm.
You know, I don't. I think it's shaped me and it's shaped my life and my family's life and um, pretty much everything around me to such a degree that um, it's. I think it's impossible to uh, picture what it would be like without it having turned out that way.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. Now then, in the time that we live, where yeah, music is kind of forced to find new ventures or new ways to get out there. Um, Is that one of those? Because I think you have adapted to it quite well in terms of how you use social media and the kind of the things you do with your sons. How has that transition been for you over the last, let's say, 9 months?
Um, uh, I think it's been really um, it's been really meaningful, and it's been touching to. Um, we really stumbled into a way to maintain a connection with some of the the people that pay attention to Wilco and pay attention to myself, um, in a way that I think has almost kind of enhanced that relationship and made it a little bit more intimate and strong in an odd way. But it wasn't through some idea that we were going to exploit social media.
Sure, sure.
I think it's, luckily, I think it came about the same way everything else that's happened for me in my life has. I think it was based on a sincere impulse to stay connected, to stay, I don't know, that if I needed something, if I need something, if I feel a certain way and I'm not that special, then I assume that other people need it and other people might care about it. And, um, and I'm in a position where I was able to just find enough people to keep. It was actually on if you're talking about the Tweedy show and the things
Sure.
we've been doing from our house, we thought that if we did it on my wife's Instagram, it would kind of keep it to the just the most hardcore of the hardcore fans that might be the loneliest of the people paying attention because they had tickets to shows and we had become sort of a part of their lives in a more time consuming way. So we just wanted to make sure that they knew we were still alive, and that we were all going through the same thing. And eventually I don't know, we've done like 150 shows
Right.
and it's
But
so many great things have happened because of it. We've learned a lot of songs and
But it must be amazing for I don't know what your regular schedule is, but I assume it involves a lot of touring and a lot of work. So it must be nice that you could get to spend time with your family and make music together.
uh yeah, I mean, um I've always toured a lot, and my family's always been well adapted
Okay.
to being gone, um, and them coming out to visit me and spending time on the road. But we've also planned our tours around having family time, and I've never really done super long tours like a lot of bands. We've always managed to just do 2 or 3 weeks and then a couple weeks at home.
Okay.
Even though we tour a lot, we're home a lot.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it's definitely the longest I've been home for any stretch in my adult life, probably since I was about 18 years old. So
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm sure, like the rest of us, you're ready to get out again as well. There's one last song that I wanted to talk about, which is a Robin or a Wren. Where did that story originate first, or that song idea?
um, well, like I mean, a lot of songs, it just starts with the first line. I mean, it just, at the last call, I was trying to think of song titles and country lyrics. Country lyrics always have that little twist. Um, at least a lot of the song lyrics that I like. Um, like you could almost encapsulate the whole song in one line or one bumper sticker or something. And so I came up with this idea that I was going to sing a song about the last call. Uh, you know, uh, just trying to contemplate um, There, well, actually, because when all the bars were shut down, there was a last call. That was probably the
Sure.
first time I ever encountered the idea, you know. So, and everything really just kind of grew out of reflecting on that finality, and then it took a turn. So at some point, and became a little bit sweeter and a little bit more hopeful, and about some sort of reincarnation or redemption. You know.
Right, and for me, what that's kind of what I found interesting in it is that it kind of it instills this immortality and memory in a way that through memory things can remain or can still remain alive. Or so in terms of probably not, but is this something you think about in terms of your legacy or kind of the music you leave behind?
Um, yeah, I don't. I think about it in terms of my mortality. I don't know
Sure.
if I think about it in terms of legacy or artistic legacy. Think of it in like, how am I remembering the people that have died in my life? And uh, you know, like my mom and dad, they didn't leave songs behind, but they left moments behind
Sure.
that I have very vivid memories of, and I can hear their voice, and I'm in a different situation in my life, and or in experiencing something, and I can hear what they would have said. I can, you know, I have enough of them in me to be able to have, you know, kind of recreate what they would, how they would have reacted to an environment. And you know, songs are just a way to enhance that kind of memory, I think. Um, Not, but I think, and then it might extend outside of your outside of your family.
Sure.
Um, so that's cool. You know, maybe that's why they were invented, to sort of not, it's hard to write down how people are, how people feel, what it feels like to be with a person. And combining words with melodies, I think, might have been an innovation that allowed people to kind of pass that sense of another person into the future a little bit, in a little bit deeper way than just the words by themselves. Maybe, I don't know.
And I hear this every once in a while from artists where they mention that they find it easier to say certain things through song than kind of in normal conversation. Is that true for yourself as well?
Well, I'm a lot less long-winded in song.
Okay.
I tend to really talk a little bit more than I feel like I need to sometimes, and in songs I'm much more uh, geared towards making it simple.
Final question then. I have to kind of pry a little bit. I read somewhere that you were working on new Wilco material. Is there anything you can share about kind of how that is going and kind of where it's heading?
Uh, yeah, it's been you know, we started on a record in January of last year, and then we went on tour, and then the tour got canceled, and obviously, we, like everybody else in the United States, we've been separated pretty much since then.
Mm.
Um, but in the last few months, we've uh, been doing a lot of remote kind of conversing and sharing. I've been sharing songs with everybody, and we've been preparing for a period maybe in the near future when we're able to get back together in the studio. So there's a lot of material and a lot of ideas, and it's, the energy for it is really, as you can imagine, that is really an exciting prospect to all of us, to get to be in a room and play music with other people. You know,
Yeah, that
I've been lucky. I get to do it with my kids, but you know, we're really looking forward to it.
No, that's what I hear a lot. Where I mean, music does seem to be, and kind of gathering and enjoying music does seem to be some sort of human necessity in a way. So I think everybody's just waiting to get out
Well,
there again and then enjoy that.
we need
Jeff, I
that.
want. Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
we need that communal element in our lives for sure.
Right. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I wish you all the best in the future. Then I hope everything goes well with hopefully the vaccine will work. I don't know, um,
Same
but
to you, and
hopefully we get to enjoy live music again because yeah, I miss it immensely as well.
yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, and it was great talking to you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank your friend for the question.
Yeah, I will. All right. Thank you. Have a good one.